In this city marked by contrasts, the shadows of skyscrapers were projected onto working-class neighborhoods, where light struggled to penetrate the narrow streets, where residents struggled every day to get by. Malik, a young man of 20, had grown up in this world where dreams were crushed under the weight of reality. The promise of a bright future seemed to belong to others, to those who had been lucky enough to be born in a different world, a world where money flowed freely and doors opened of their own accord. But Malik was having none of that. He was the son of poverty, raised in a small apartment on the top floor of a dilapidated building, where the walls, yellowed by time, seemed ready to collapse at any moment. Her mother, Aisha, was a woman of courage. She had sacrificed her dreams to give her son a chance, waking up every morning before dawn to work in a textile factory, and coming home late, exhausted but determined to make sure Malik had a better life. She often told him that he had to fight, that even if life was hard, he had to always keep his head high and move forward. Malik, in his moments of doubt, remembered these words. But deep down, he knew everything wasn't that simple. Social inequalities were a chasm, an abyss that did not allow easy recovery. But despite everything, he persisted, secretly hoping that one day something would change.
A small miracle, perhaps.
One day, after a long day of work at the factory, as he was walking home, exhausted, he saw a crowd around an imposing glass and steel building. Luxury cars parked in front, journalists crowded around, and bodyguards ensured that nothing disrupted the order of this hushed and exclusive world. Intrigued, Malik approached. What he didn't know was that that day, his life would take a decisive turn. In the middle of the crowd, one man stood out for his imposing stature. It was Edouard Laurent, one of the richest and most powerful men in the country.
A business tycoon, a living legend, a symbol of success.
His name was on everyone's lips. His investments in technology, his thriving businesses, his villas around the world. He embodied the very idea of power and wealth, but that day something seemed broken within him. His face, usually impassive, was marked by worry, anguish, even distress. Around him, his bodyguards looked worried, but nothing could calm the man's visible agitation. Malik, although he had no particular reason to be interested in this man, felt a strange impulse. He knew that this meeting was not trivial, that something big was being prepared, even if he did not yet understand its ins and outs. He approached discreetly, curious to understand what was happening. His gaze met that of Edouard Laurent, and a strange silence settled. The man, seeing this young boy among the journalists and power figures, wondered. With a sign, he ordered a guard to let him pass.
Who are you, young man?
Laurent asked, his voice calm but authoritative, his piercing gaze seeking to assess Malik.
The young boy suddenly felt trapped.
How could an insignificant being like him stand against a giant of this world? But a kind of courage, an unsuspected confidence that he had never felt before, awoke in him. Without thinking, he replied, in a calm and resolute tone.
I know how to save your daughter.
The sentence, spoken so simply, had the effect of a clap of thunder. Edouard Laurent stopped. The crowd around them stopped, hanging on the lips of this poor boy. His eyes narrowed, trying to understand. Malik felt his heart beat faster, but it didn't flag. He was here now with this billionaire, and he knew deep down that this moment might never happen again. We had to act.
You know how to save my daughter.
Laurent repeated, his voice betraying both disbelief and a glimmer of hope. He didn't really believe what Malik was saying, but something in his eyes, something in his determination, shook him to his core. Yes, Malik replied. But it will come at a price you cannot imagine. The billionaire scrutinized him for a moment, as if trying to discern the intentions hidden behind the words of this young man. Was it a scam? A game to get a reward? Or a real secret he didn't know? Malik was not a doctor, but he had read a lot. In the dusty old books of the public library, he had discovered the existence of an ancient medicine, a lost knowledge that, according to some legends, could cure diseases that modern science could not cure. This rare disease, which affected Claire Laurent, the billionaire's daughter, had no cure. Experts around the world had failed to find a solution. But Malik, through his research in old writings and ancient traditions, had learned of the existence of forgotten remedies. Rare herbs, grown in remote areas, used by ancient healers, medicinal rituals practiced for centuries, but largely forgotten by the modern world. He spoke of plants, roots, secret ceremonies. He explained that the cure was not to be found in the most advanced technologies, but in nature itself, in the treasures that humanity had long neglected in favor of profit and progress at all costs. Laurent, who had always believed that money and science could buy everything, listened attentively, but could not help but doubt. Malik's words were so foreign, so distant from his world of luxury and technology. How could a boy like him possess such knowledge? This could only be an illusion.
So what do you want?
Laurent asked, his voice drier, as if testing the young man's sincerity. Malik lowered his head, the weight of this conversation and the stakes of his proposal weighing on him. He knew this chance was unique. He took a deep breath and replied in a firm but truthful voice. What I want is the opportunity to show the world that those who have nothing, those who are left behind, can also hold answers to society's greatest riddles. You and your daughter have everything you want, but you are prisoners of your own power. I have what you seek, but I can't give everything and get nothing in return. A heavy silence settled between them, a silence loaded with unspoken meanings. Laurent stared at him for a long time, his eyes piercing Malik's thoughts. Then, slowly, he lowered his head and nodded. He understood now. This boy was not like the others. Maybe he had something that money and power couldn't buy. Then prove it, said Edouard Laurent, his voice serious. Thus began an unexpected partnership, an alliance between two radically opposed worlds. A man who had everything, and a boy who had nothing, but who had the power to change the course of things. Over the weeks, a slow but profound transformation took place between Malik and Edouard Laurent. What had begun as a contract based on an urgent need, Claire's healing, gradually metamorphosed into a complex relationship, marked by moments of doubt, recognition, and questioning. Malik, initially a simple boy from poor neighborhoods, found himself in a dynamic that propelled him, without him seeking it, towards unsuspected spheres. Edouard, in his desperate quest to save his daughter, had embarked on this journey to remote lands, far from his world of comfort and foresight. Each step of the journey became a challenge. Crossing thick forests, steep mountains and rushing rivers, Laurent initially felt totally lost, caught in the discomfort of nature and the unknown. But Malik, with his intimate knowledge of these places, seemed perfectly at ease. He did not hesitate to get wet in murky waters or climb steep paths, relentless in his determination. The billionaire, disturbed but intrigued, began to perceive, little by little, the depth of the young man's wisdom. He was no longer simply his guide, but a mirror of everything he had neglected in his own life. Humanity, simplicity, harmony with nature. One evening, after a long day of walking in an isolated valley, Laurent, exhausted and destitute, sat down at the foot of a majestic tree. "Why did you bring me here, Malik? Why this trip?" he asked, his voice betraying a fatigue much deeper than that of the body. Malik, without responding immediately, observed the stars that shone above them. He understood that it was not just a remedy that he was bringing to Laurent, but a real life lesson. "Because you are lost, Mr. Laurent," he answered finally, "and not just in the forest.
You are lost in your own life, and you don't even know it."
This confession echoed in Laurent's mind, like an echo of truths that he had long ignored. He looked at Malik, the young man of modest origins, and a light seemed to light up in his eyes. This journey, this difficult path, was not just a way to save his daughter. It was also a way for him to find himself, to rediscover something he had lost along the way, something that money and power could not offer him. When they finally found the rare plant they were looking for, a solemn silence fell over them. The moment was one of both triumph and revelation. The remedy, a carefully prepared concoction from the roots and leaves of this forgotten plant, was administered to Claire Laurent. Signs of healing appeared almost instantly. The girl's pale skin regained a tint of life, and her breathing became more regular. Laurent, moved, could not take his eyes off his daughter. He had seen suffering, loss, helplessness. But today he saw hope. Malik, observing the scene, did not feel proud of having succeeded. What he felt was something much more subtle, the certainty that it wasn't just Claire's healing that had changed things, but the opening of a new world, a world in which the boundaries of possibility were infinite, as long as you believed in something greater than yourself. Laurent, who for years had believed that everything could be bought, that wealth was enough to solve all problems, began to glimpse another truth. He didn't have everything he thought he had. He had power, money, fame, but he did not have simplicity, humility, and wisdom. He did not have the ability to see beyond the walls he had built around himself. Malik, this unpretentious young man, had taken him beyond all that. When they returned to the city, Laurent, overwhelmed, proposed to Malik something he never thought possible: a partnership. It wouldn't just be a financial investment, but a chance for Malik to build a future in his own image, far from the shadows of a society that judged people by their social status.
You changed my life, Malik. You changed the way I see the world.
I'll give you what you want, but it's not for you alone. It's for everyone who, like you, has been ignored by those who believe that money alone is everything. Malik, who had never sought to become rich, found himself faced with a moral dilemma. Accepting Laurent's offer would mean entering a world that he had always observed from afar, a world where the rules were different, but where he could, perhaps, make a difference. However, deep down, Malik knew that true wealth did not lie in money or fame. He found true wealth in the transformation of lives, in the ability to see beyond appearances and to nourish hopes that others had left aside. And so, Malik did not embrace the world of power with the same avidity as Laurent. On the contrary, he shaped it in his own way, with the wisdom he had acquired, the humility he carried, and the vision he had of the world. He became a discreet figure of power, an invisible leader, whose influence was measured not in numbers but in lives transformed, beliefs overturned, and hopes rekindled. And in this dynamic, Malik became much more than he had ever dreamed. He became the one who, through his knowledge and his ability to inspire, built a fairer, more egalitarian world, where money would never again be the only criterion of value.